I didn't think about having titles or championships because I knew that was going to come with it, with whatever I was doing, which is Muay Thai. All I cared about was what I was doing today and tomorrow. That's it. Everything else I know it's gonna fall in place. I mean, it wouldn't make sense if I wasn't a champion because I was working so hard and I was so focused and I was always doing the best that I can to be the best that I can.
Welcome to another episode of the Science of Building Champions podcast, where I chat to top-level fighters and coaches and dive into their stories to discover what makes them champions. And today, I have the honor to speak with Ognjen Topic, European-born, 3-times world champion, WKA International Champion, and ranked #1 in the United States, who's also trained and fought extensively in Thailand too. So it's great to speak to you, Ognjen. Thanks for being here on this podcast with me here today.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Yep.
Appreciate the time, mate. But so you're known as a Thai world champion, Muay Thai world champion, and you're fighting out of the United States, but you're originally from Bosnia. So I want to dig into what your story is. You know, how did you find yourself in the US, and how did you start in Muay Thai?
Yeah. So, like you were saying, I'm considered a Bosnian, but also a Serbian. So in our country, when it was all Yugoslavia all together, we had a couple of different countries, that formed the country Yugoslavia, but we all had different religious views. And so, some were Catholic Christian, Serbs are Orthodox Christian, and then there was also Muslims as well. And so when the war started, we were living in Bosnia, but we're considered Serbian Orthodox by our religion. So we're Serbs instead of Bosnians, even though we were all from Bosnia. Nobody really, people outside of Yugoslavia can consider us as Bosnians because we were born there. But people within Yugoslavia don't consider us Bosnians; they consider us Serbs.
Right.
So it's very difficult to wrap your mind around. So we had the war that started in 1992, and it began even earlier than that. So we had to flee Bosnia, and we left on the last day that we possibly can leave. And we were fortunate enough to do that. My father was actually living, or not living, but he was living here, but he was also working in America with his brother as a construction worker. And so obviously, tensions were high at that time, and he was always looking at news and following along what was going on. And one day he saw in the newspaper, how the country is going to be split up. So he knew right off the bat that there was going to be a war. So he booked a flight back to Bosnia, and we stayed there for a little bit, and things started progressing even more and more. And my father just said, "Okay, we have to leave. We have to leave like now, instantly." And what happened is there was before then there was conflict going on in Croatia. And right after that, there was a wedding in Bosnia, and the wedding was between Serbian Orthodox couple, and there was a Muslim that came in there and he shot the priest or the father, and that was like a sign of the war, and it was like a sign of okay, this is what's going to be. It's going to be a war based on religion. And that was the day when that happened. Sanctions started happening across the country, and then my father said, "Okay, we have to leave tonight." And first, his brother was also living there, who also has a son and a wife, and we all got together. It was probably like nighttime, and my father's brother was saying, "Okay, we can just leave, tomorrow morning, first thing tomorrow morning." My father said, "No, we have to go now." So we packed everything that we can pack up, and we started leaving then. And we left on, one of the last buses that was going out of Bosnia into Serbia. So we were fortunate enough to escape the war without, having too many difficulties. We got to Serbia, and then my father started building a house over there with the little money that he had saved up, and he was also a professional soccer at the in Bosnia. So obviously he was also saving money here in America, saved up some money, started building a house. And we lived there for about 3 years, but obviously there was no job. I mean, inflation was insane.
Right.
For like a billion dinars, you can get maybe like a loaf of bread. So the inflation was the highest that it's ever been at that time in the world. And so there was no jobs. There was nothing you can do to survive. It was very bad time. My father came back here to America. He probably stayed here a couple of years, and he was sending us money, doing the best that he can. And he was playing the immigration lottery here, and he wins the immigration lottery in 1995, and that's how we ended up in America.
So how old were you at that time?
9.
You were 9, so you came over at 9. Right.
Yeah, my sister was 12.
Right.
Yeah.
And everyone's out, everyone's safe, and you've got this clean start now.
Yeah, everybody's safe. I mean, we had friends that died, or my parents had friends that died in the war, and one of my uncles, or maybe like a distant uncle, he got shot by a sniper, but he survived. That was right in the around this area in the eye or around there. He survived. He was okay. But a lot of people had a lot tougher situations than us. So like I said, we were very fortunate enough to escape the war and not have too many difficulties.
Yeah. And you obviously a background there of people that are used to struggle, family that are used to struggle. This is real. How did you end up training and fighting in Muay Thai? How did that all come about?
Well, when we came here, of course, your parents always want you to do the best that you can do, because at the end of the day, my father was doing everything for me, my sister, and my mother. Nothing he did was for himself. So his whole life was dedicated to bettering our lives. So they wanted us to go to school, finish college, and have normal, regular jobs. But at some point, when I was like 13 years old, 14 years old, I started watching a lot of boxing fights on TV. And for some reason, that's what I wanted to do. There was just something that attracted me to fighting. And so I told them that I wanted to do this and I wanted to box. But right off the bat, they said, absolutely not. We didn't bring you here to America to, go and fight. And to them, fighting is like the lowest way of making a living, an income.
Right.
In their mind, it's like, okay, you tried to go to school, you failed. You tried to have like a regular job, you failed. Everything you did, you failed. Now you have absolutely no other chance besides to literally fight for your money. That's how they saw fighting. They didn't look at it the way that I saw it, as like, a competition. So they didn't allow me to fight. So I said, okay, if you don't let me box, then let me do like karate or taekwondo, because there's no hits to the head. And they also didn't want me to take the punishment to the head, because when I was a kid, I was very wild, and I had like, concussions and splits all over my head, and they didn't want anything bad happening. And I understood that. I respected that. So I started doing taekwondo, but throughout that whole time, I did that for 4 years until I was 18 and I got my black belt. But throughout that whole time, it wasn't it. I knew this wasn't what I wanted to do. It's as close as I can get to the real thing, but it wasn't what I wanted to do, because, then I started watching K1 fights as well, kickboxing. And, and, I was just thinking to myself, if I was to get into a fight, I would get destroyed, by somebody like this. So then I ended up watching ESPN once, and I saw real Muay Thai fight for the first time. And, they explained what it was and all these other things about the sport. And instantly I knew that's what I wanted to do. But obviously, I've never heard of that sport before at that time. This is 2005 now. I've never heard of that sport before. So I go on the internet and I start looking for schools. And the school that I find is like 20 minutes away from where I live. So I'm like, okay, perfect. I go down there, or it was maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. I go over there, I walk in and I ask them, is the Muay Thai school still here? And they're like, no, those guys left about a month earlier. Or no, I'm sorry. I found I found that school out by just driving around, and they had this poster sign just on the facade of the building,
Yeah.
and it said Muay Thai, and it had this like guy that had the monkon on, all the
Yes.
traditional stuff, and I was like, that's the stuff that I saw on TV. And then I looked out, I started searching their name and their website, and then that's how I got to that place again. And then I found them. They were about like 35 minutes away from where I was. And then I went there at 18 years old, and that was it. Ever since then, I've been with the same gym. And then to continue on the story, uh, I told my parents about it, and of course they flipped out again because they didn't want
Yeah.
me to do kickboxing. Because at that time I was watching kickboxing with my father as well, and him and I would always enjoy watching fighting and fights, but he would never want me to do it. So I told him, okay, I'm not gonna fight. Just let me train. I'm not gonna, like do any sparring or fighting. I'll keep myself safe. Don't worry about anything. So they're like, okay, fine. We'll let you train. So I started training, but of course, my only objective was to actually fight. So I knew I was gonna fight at some point. So I started training, and about 2 years go by, and the reason why 2 years went by and I had my first fight is because I was struggling with the fact that I would be lying to my parents and didn't want to do that, or I was trying to figure out ways, the logistics of it, how I'm gonna lie to them and make believe that I'm not fighting, but I am. And if I come back home with like a blue eye or something like that, or
Yeah.
a broken nose, who knows what can happen. So 2 years go by, I start fighting, and nothing happens for a couple of years. I'm pretty much having an amateur career behind their back. They have no clue that I'm fighting. They just know that I'm training. And when I would have like come back with like bruises or something like that after a fight, I would just sleep over a friend's house, and then that next morning I would have training, and they would know that on a Saturday, and I would just come back home from at that time when I would usually come back home from training, and they would be like, "Well, what happened to your eye?" And I would just tell them, "Oh, I was just from training. Don't worry about it. It's nothing bad." And
Yeah.
that's how I pretty much got through most of my amateur career. And at that time, my sister knew that I was fighting, so she was always very supportive. She kept the lie with me, and then one day, my cousin who lives in UK, he sees one of my fights on YouTube, and by that time, everything was off of Facebook. Everything, I never had any fights on YouTube for that reason. I didn't want my parents or my family finding out that I was a fighter.
Yeah.
So my cousin finds out, he calls up my dad, and he tells him, look what your son is doing. You're letting your son do this. He's like a barbarian, and you shouldn't be doing this. And my father confronts me about it, and we stop talking for like 4 months because of this situation. And I was still living with them at that time, and I think I was about like 25, maybe 26, something like that.
Yeah.
And so of course I'm not gonna talk to him. He's not talking to me. We walk past each other in the hallway, like we're ghosts for 4 months.
Right.
And then some time passes over, and then we kind of just start talking together. Nobody apologizes to each other. Nobody says, hey, we should have a sit down and talk about this. It just kind of like started going back to the way it was. And he doesn't bring up fighting. I don't bring up fighting. So in the back of his mind, and my mom, they know that I was still continuing on with what I was doing, but we just never brought it up. And so I would say a couple of years passed by, and then now I'm turning into a pro. And so now I'm thinking to myself, all right, I need to let them know what I'm doing. It's not because I need support. I don't care about support. This is going to get done whether they support me or they don't support me. It doesn't matter to me. It's just about, I don't want to lie to my parents. I don't want to have to go out of my way and come up with these crazy stories and ways that I'm, trying to avoid an argument with them because I'm doing something that I love. So it's our Christmas now, and that's January 7th, our Orthodox Christmas. And I sit both of them down, and I just tell them that this is what I'm doing. I'm a professional fighter now, and you're either gonna support me or this is the last day that you're gonna see me. And I was fully prepared to leave them that day.
Right.
And me saying that about my parents means a lot because my parents are everything to me. They did everything that they can for me and my sister to have a good life, or the best life that they can give to us.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things I didn't do because of my parents. I didn't get into drinking because of my parents, drugs because of my parents, and all my friends around me were all doing that stuff, but I kept them in the back of my mind. Of course, obviously because of the sport too, I didn't do any of that stuff. I kept myself healthy all because of them. I finished college. One of the reasons is because of them as well, because I wanted to, do something for them because they've done so much for us. And so me saying that I was willing to leave my parents meant a lot. And I knew that my mother was going to crumble and she was going to just be like, okay, I'll support you. Just don't do anything. But my father, I thought that he was going to either say, okay, that's it. Fuck off, pack up your stuff. That's it. We're done. Right. Or he can say, okay, I'll support you. And, fortunately for me, or for both of us, he supported me, and he's been supportive ever since then. And now he's one of my biggest fans, so things worked out well. So that's the beginning of how things started.
That's
complicated.
A hell of a beginning. That's awesome though. It's the struggle kind of continued. It really did, didn't it? But all the time in parallel here, then you're still doing your studies. You're still kind of keeping up your end of the bargain in that you're actually getting your qualifications. So that was sort of graphic design, wasn't it? That's what you do as well in parallel.
Yeah,
you still do that now.
Yeah, I do. And that was a very difficult time in my life because I had so many things that I had to do. I had to go to school, I had to work, and then I had to train. And for me, training as an amateur, I still consider myself as a professional. That was still my profession. It was a career for me. Right. I never missed practice or anything. I was always 100% prepared for when I needed to fight. And that was due to my work ethic, I guess, But obviously, I still needed to finish college, and I still needed to make money. So that was a very difficult time for me because, man, I was just working regular jobs, and as like an 18, 19, 20-year-old, you weren't able to get paid a lot. So I was making I was just figuring things out. And at that time, my coaches definitely helped me out as well because me and another fighter that was there as well, who was high level, we both weren't making a lot of money, but they saw that we had a lot of potential and they didn't want to lose us. So we asked them if they can, lower our tuition or let us train for free, and they did that. So that was very helpful from their part.
And so was the goal kind of when you started training, even then as an amateur, was it to become a champion? This was what the plan was?
Not at the time, because I knew I didn't think about having titles or championships because I knew that was going to come with it, with whatever I was doing, which is Muay Thai. All I cared about was what I was doing today and tomorrow. That's it. Everything else I know it's gonna fall in place. I mean, it wouldn't make sense if I wasn't a champion because I was working so hard and I was so focused and I was always doing the best that I can to be the best that I can, Yeah. And so I knew the titles were gonna come. My coaches though, they wanted the title, so they were always pushing for that. So they wanted a title. Okay, fine. We go and we fight and we'll get the title. That was my mentality. It wasn't really up to me. All I needed to worry about is what I'm doing in the gym. Am I getting good enough training? And that was it. All the other stuff is gonna fall into place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I recommend to anybody who's doing anything. I see a lot of people, they're going backwards. Some of these like younger fighters are talking to me about like the social media and stuff like that, but they haven't even achieved anything. What do you care about the social media if you haven't achieved anything? Achieve something, be the best that you can be, get a name for yourself, and all that other stuff is just going to fall in place. That's going to be behind you. Why are you thinking about how many followers you need in order to make money? Fuck all the money. It's not about that. In the sport, there isn't a lot of money.
Right.
So you have to come to terms with that as well. And so my advice for younger fighters, and not just younger fighters, but anybody who's trying to do something at a high level, is to just worry about being the best that you can be today and tomorrow. That's it. That's all you have. Everything else is going to come later on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about making those managing those steps right now, isn't it? And not getting too distracted with what you think is way in the future there. It's
right. Exactly.
It happens. It happens. And talking about the money side as well, because you do coaching, you do the seminars and all that kind of stuff as well. When did that kind of happen? When did that sort of fall into place?
Well, that was actually my coach told me to start doing that. To me, because I'm always thinking about, you know, it's not enough or I'm not good enough. Like who's gonna take personals from me? I can't even beat Saenchai, and that's kind of like crazy to think because
Can't even beat Saenchai.
that's what I'm saying. But that's the mentality you have to have,
Yeah.
And if you don't have that mentality, you're not gonna get very far. You have to believe like that. And so for me, I started doing the personals and the seminars in 2014. So that's like well into my professional career already. I should have been doing this when I was an amateur, but because I had the skill then. But to me, I wasn't good enough. I mean, unless I'm able to beat some of these Thais and fight at that level, high level, I don't deserve to be teaching anybody. But
Right.
my coach kept telling me that you should start doing this, make some money on the side. Because at that time I didn't have. I just quit my graphic design job. So I had to get on social media and start promoting myself because now I was becoming, quote unquote, walking business. And I had to start doing things like that. And so he told me that I should start doing the personal training and the seminars. And I said, okay, you know what? You're right. I will start doing that. And then I started doing it.
Yeah.
So.
And did you find that teaching other people started to help you be a better fighter as well?
Yeah, 100%.
It's amazing how that happens, isn't it? When you start breaking things down.
Yeah, and then it keeps you in check as well, because sometimes if I'm holding pads for somebody and I tell them don't do it like this, do it like this, and then I ask myself, wait, am I even doing that? And then I go back, and then that kind of makes me fight better as well, because now I'm doing something that I like almost taught myself on working with my client or somebody like that.
Yes.
So yeah, it's always that's always happening as well in the background.
And with Muay Thai being your choice in the end, going from, well, Taekwondo there because that's what you could get, but originally you were drawn to Western boxing.
Yeah.
What is it you love and appreciate, or did you love and appreciate about Muay Thai from the start? Why did you head that way?
Well, the two things that I saw was, number one, how calm and poised the fighters were, and then later on, I realized the importance of teep, of the technique teep, which is like the push kick, front
Yeah.
kick. But the main thing was how poised and calm the fighters were. It was complete. Before then, the only thing I knew was like we were saying boxing and kickboxing. And kickboxing and boxing, those guys are all over the place. They're always jumping and moving around, and kickboxing as well. They're never like very still and just stable and sturdy. And that's one of the things that I saw in Muay Thai. And so that's what attracted me to it. There was just something beautiful in that, and I think that's why I wanted to do that. And yeah, from there on, it just took off.
And has your appreciation of Muay Thai changed since that start? Are there different things now that stand out to you than you originally noticed?
Yeah, now it's all the small, minute details. When you first start off Muay Thai, it's really not that difficult to learn. I think you can, I would say you can learn it within a year, and the reason being because it's such a simple sport. There's not too much flashy stuff going on. It's not like Taekwondo where you have to learn like spinning kicks and all that stuff. It's a very efficient sport. And so, as far as techniques go, I mean, there's not much for me or any of these guys that are on my level that they need to learn. I mean, we mastered all the basic stuff. So now it's all the minute details, such as like timing, doing the feints, the fakes, and putting all that together, so it creates a stronger style.
Yeah, yeah. It is that there's kind of only so many root methods, isn't there? But the way you
Yeah,
can apply them, there's a lot of variation to it, and that's that subtlety then that
right.
makes people stand apart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm obsessed with being efficient and perfection. And I know perfect doesn't exist, but it doesn't matter. I feel like that there's still a chance that perfection still exists, and the fact that I think that, it makes me want to be even more perfect. And I always use this as kind of like the same thing from Senna, Ayrton Senna, one of the greatest Formula One drivers, and he was he had one of the fastest laps on Monaco in France, and he was talking about how he was just cutting these corners like so close to the guardrail where everybody was maybe like a foot away or like a foot away from the guardrail. He was like an inch away from the guardrail. So
yeah,
so just that aspect of efficiency made him quicker by like seconds, and seconds in a race, in any type of race, is like years,
yeah, yeah,
And it's a long time difference. And so same thing goes for Muay Thai. Like let's say instead of slipping a punch this much, you slip a punch this much. Even if it grazes you, that's perfect. That's like the perfect slip.
right.
So it's those small little details that I'm obsessed with.
And is that why you're still fighting now, despite all the years and all the training and everything? Is that kind of self-development, and looking for that perfection, if you can find it? Is that what
Yeah.
keeps you going?
Yeah, it has to be that. I mean, there's nothing else that could attribute to that, and then the love of the sport, because I also love graphic design, but I'm just not obsessed with it. So I
Right.
can go weeks without doing any design. But with Muay Thai, if I went weeks without doing Muay Thai, I mean, I would go insane. So yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that you just keep trying to strive for that perfection.
And what do you think are the most important traits that a champion needs, or characteristics?
I'll tell you from another professional what he said. I had an interview with a guy right before one of my fights, and the interviewer was asking me about ego. And at that time, I was always thinking to myself, ego is such a negative word, because to me it wasn't a negative word. To me, it was a very positive thing to have an ego, and to be very competitive. But I never really used it publicly, because I feel like people would look at me in a weird way, like, oh man, this guy's an egomaniac. But they just didn't understand the mentality of it, of that word ego,
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about it, and he tells me that he interviewed Emmanuel Stewart, which is one of the greatest boxing trainers coming out of Krong Gym. And
Right.
he trained many boxing champions, one of them being Hearns. And so he tells me that he had a conversation with Emmanuel Stewart about this as well. And he asked him, what does it take to be a champion? And he says, ego. That was his one word, ego. And ever since then, I realized, yeah, I was right all along. I mean, this is a positive attribute to have, as long as you can control it. I'm not saying be egotistical to the point where you walk into a gym, and then you let it take over you, and then obviously you don't get anything out of that, out of like a training session. I'm talking about you have to have ego. You have to be extremely competitive, especially if you want to do anything on a high level. People who aren't competitive, they're never going to make it at a higher level, so you have to have that, those certain attributes about you. So yeah, one of the things I would say, ego, and then of course all the basic things that are necessary. You have to have a good work ethic, where you do the training whether you want to do it or you don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to train, and the only reason why I do it is because it brings me closer to to those goals, of having more titles, more championships, um, trying to perfect the way I fight. So that's the only reason why I'm training. But who wants to put themselves in that position? And when I'm training, I'm always going at 100%, or maybe 80%, 90%, 100%, which is at a high level, because um yeah, so what I want to say with that, when I'm training at those levels, I mean, who wants to subject themselves to that on a daily basis? I
Yeah.
don't want to do that, but I have to do it, because I know when I step into that ring, I can't use anything as an excuse. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm just going to get my ass kicked. So I have to be prepared at all times. And so, yeah, I mean, I do it strictly because it just brings me closer to those goals, rather than me liking what I have to do.
Yes. Yeah. It's not a comfortable situation training hard. And just like a fight is not comfortable either, is it? It's almost, that's part of the training, getting used to that.
Right.
And if you're not comfortable with being uncomfortable, then you're going to struggle in the ring big
Correct.
time. And that competitiveness, I'm interested, do you feel competitive against the individuals that you've got in front of you all the time? Or is it more of a kind of self-competitiveness where you're trying to beat yourself, as such, move your own level up each time?
So against myself, I'm competitive, but against somebody else, it's more of the ego thing, and it's ego and being competitive. Because if some guy comes and says, "Oh, I can kick your ass or I can beat you," you just you turn on whatever it gets turned on in me, where I become extremely competitive, and then I say, "Okay, let's come and try to prove it then,"
Yes.
And I think that's part of the that ego thing, And if you don't have that, how are you supposed to beat this guy? Because it all starts here mentally, So you have to have that instantly turn on. So I think that's a big part of it.
What do you think is the difference between, say, someone who does succeed in the sport, and someone who doesn't succeed but has the same training situation and options that you do?
Well, it could be a lot of things. Like I was saying, it could be that maybe they're not competitive enough, or maybe they just don't love the sport, what they're doing, as much as somebody else does. Maybe they're very good amateur champions, or very good amateur fighters. They have like 15, 20 fights, but they don't want to take it to the next level, and that's okay. I think that's fine as well.
Yeah.
As long as you know something about yourself, then that's okay for me. But I think there can be many answers to that question.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'm interested to know if there's anything that you've picked up or learned from your studies with graphic design that you've brought to your Muay Thai training that's perhaps a bit different, and an influence outside of Muay Thai in particular that's helped with your Muay Thai training.
Yeah, there has, things such as keeping design work simple and straight to the point. That translates directly to Muay Thai. Keeping things simple and straight to the point. I don't want to waste any unnecessary energy, where I put myself in a position where I'm gonna get beat up, in the ring. So everything is direct and straight to the point. As far as like the fakes go, it's all about indicating and not finishing, and that's a direct technique from painting as well. where it's a style of painting called alla prima,
Right.
where it's done very quickly, and it's like broad brush strokes, and it's not like you're not sitting there for hours trying to like perfect one line. It's just done quickly, and it's more of that impressionist style if people need to get like a sense of what that is. And so for them, it's all about indicating with that brushstroke, but not finishing. You just want to give them an indication of what that is. That's a human being. That's a face. That's an eye. When you step back, it looks great, but when you step close to the painting, that's when you see all these broad brushstrokes, and it's like a completely different thing, you know. And so that's directly translated into like I was saying with the fakes. You just want to indicate, but you don't want to finish, because if you finish, then it's not a fake. It's the actual complete
Yes.
technique.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Love that. And what would you say, were your greatest obstacles or challenges as a fighter, and what are the lessons you've learned from those?
Well, I always like to bring up the obstacles that I had in the ring, because those are the ones that count the most. I had many that were outside of the ring, like such as not having enough money or time or energy, and I had to come up with all these ways to figure all that stuff out.
Mm.
But the ones that count the most are the ones where you're doing things under pressure. And what more what's going to give you more pressure than an actual fight, besides you picking up a rifle and then going into actual battlefield and war.
Yeah.
So I think this is the highest level as far as challenge goes. And I had a couple of fights, but I'll give you one of the latest ones that I just had in December. I had some issues with my shoulder. There was some nerve, I guess, damage, and my whole left arm, was completely like numb and dead for quite a long time, for probably like about 2 months.
Right.
And I wasn't even, to the point where I wasn't even able to do one push up. And I had a fight coming up because previously, 6 months before that fight, I lost by a TKO. And I've been itching to get back in the ring, because that's my ego. I have to prove to myself that I'm still capable of fighting, and that I can overcome what I just went through in the last fight. So I have to fight. I have to fight. I have to fight. And I'm waiting like 6 months already. So now that happened in August. Now I'm in Thailand, and now they tell me that I have the fight. And this is like right before or right after that happened with my shoulder. And so now I'm dealing with this shoulder issue, where like my whole left side is just burning from that nerve damage.
Yeah.
And the trainers asked me if they wanted me to call off the fight, but there was no way that I can do that, because again, now I have to wait another month or 2 months to prove to myself, that I can still continue doing this. So I had to do it, even with this with the injury. So, and this was against an elite level fighter. They call him Yodmuay in Thailand. So
Yeah.
they told me who I was fighting against, and they said this is who he is. He's a Yodmuay fighter, and I was very excited, because finally this is the competition that I need to fight against. I don't want to be fighting against just regular guys. I need to be fighting at the highest level, or I don't feel good about myself. So we start fighting, and before that, another thing is I had a cut on my right shin in that fight where I got a TKO. I ended up doing a low kick, and he blocked it, and I ended up splitting my shin. So those 6 months went by, and I was already kicking with my right leg. So I automatically, I thought to myself, okay, there's no way that this is going to split up again, because I'm kicking 100%. Everything's fine. There's no injuries, no pain on the shin.
Yeah.
So the fight starts, and first round, first low kick I throw, my shin splits.
Yeah.
So now I have to worry about what I'm going to be, and how I'm going to be attacking this guy with my right leg. So that weapon is taken away from me, because I still have to think about what's going to happen in the next fight. What if I tear my shin even more, and now I can't fight next time? So I have to think about preserving my right leg, and I have to figure out how I'm fighting this guy with my left arm, because it was like hard for me to keep up my hand.
Yeah.
So we start fighting, and he's outpointing me, and by third round he's well ahead on the points. But by that time I was already targeting his stomach, because I knew I was losing at that time. I didn't have all the weapons that I needed, and of course he was also a very good fighter too, so that played a big role. And I just kept targeting the stomach. I would catch him in the head sometimes as well, and I just knew that I was going to knock him out, because if I didn't knock him out, I was going to lose. And fourth round comes by, and we're in between, and my coaches are telling me what I need to do and to keep pressuring forward and going for that knockout. And fifth round comes around, and I just keep going forward, and I finally catch him with a left hook, and that was it. He gets knocked out. So that was a difficult situation that I had to overcome. And there was another fight like that, where I was also in a bad situation where I knew I needed the knockout to win, and that came to fruition as well, and I won that fight as well. So those are the fights that have the most meaning, the ones where I had the most difficulty in winning.
Yeah. And coming back with a knockout, especially
Yeah.
when you know you're outpointed, and that's the only way that
Right.
you're going to win. And do you find that you're able to make those decisions yourself as a fighter, or do you heavily depend on like your corner team with your sort of tactical decisions there? How does that all work for you personally?
No, I definitely depend on my corner as well. The fight that I was talking about before this one, that was in Mexico, and my coach told me, you know what? Instead of just throwing that left kick to the body, throw it to the head and let's see what happens. So I listened to him. I threw the left kick to the head, and that's what started the initial knockout of that opponent, and which won me the fight. So I definitely rely on my team as well to tell me what has to be done, because they have different eyes from the outside rather than you being on the inside.
It's a completely different perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. You can see a lot of big opportunities that are just you can't see when you're in the midst of it. Yeah.
And then there's times where I know that I'm not going to be able to get something that my coach is telling me, and then you dismiss it. You take what you feel like is gonna work. You disregard what you know is not gonna what's not gonna work.
Yes. Yeah, there are definitely those instances, aren't there, where something's being asked for and you're just thinking, I actually struggle to find that timing or distance with this guy, or I'm just too tired to activate that now.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
kind of off the table. It
Yeah,
would be a nice to have, but I know I'm not going to manage that.
right.
How has your training changed, from when you first started training until now?
Um, Drastically, it's changed. When I
Yeah.
first started training, keep in mind that was like I was saying, 2005, and my coaches, they both didn't have the experience. I mean, with them together, they had two fights. One coach had a boxing match, the other coach had like a smoker Muay Thai. So we were all learning on the go. We didn't
Yeah.
really know what the hell we were doing. The only thing that helped them out is the fact that they were in Thailand and they went to train there for a couple of weeks. And so they kind of like saw the picture of how things are supposed to be done and how the Thais do it. And fortunately for me, they had the same mindset that I did. It was just about the work ethic, like I was saying, and they liked the technical style of fighting as well. And so, there was like times when we were training for fights, and we would be doing like 400 kicks. Now, if you ask me to do 400 kicks now, I'll laugh in your face. There was no way you're going to get that many kicks out of me in a training session. But that's what we did because we didn't know. So it was lack of experience, and experience is, like the Latin saying is, experience is the mother of all learning. I believe that's how it is, and it's true. I mean, experience is you can't fake experience, you know.
Yeah.
And because we didn't know, we had to just throw everything in there. So we were working extremely hard, and I worked like 3 times as hard as I work now because of the experience. And one of the things that helped me learn how much I need to do is fighting in Thailand and taking fights on a very short notice. You know, sometimes I would have to take fights on like 4 days notice.
Right.
And at that point, you're asking yourself, you know, throughout that whole time when you're in America training, you know, you have like a whole month to prepare for a fight. But here in Thailand, you need about, I would say, 2 weeks to be prepared for a fight. And then when they show up to the gym and they say, okay, you got to fight in 4 days, and then you say to yourself, well, I've never done that before. I mean, I've been training in America, and I've done like these 1 month training sessions to prepare for a fight. How the hell am I supposed to fight within 4 days? I mean, yeah, I'm training, but I'm not training at 100%. You know, I'm just training to stay at like a certain level. So, you know, challenges like that were a big learning factor, because then in those fights, I always felt way better than I did when I was training hard and preparing for a fight. And I suspect the reason being is because of pressure. And I think when you corner yourself and you put all that pressure on yourself to perform at a high level, and the wall's behind your back and you got nowhere else to go besides forward, then two things are going to happen. Either you're going to do what you're going to do, and you're going to do well and you're going to win, or the outcome is going to be good, or you're going to find out something else about yourself, and you're going to find out then, okay, maybe this isn't who I thought I was. Maybe this isn't me. Maybe I need to do something else. So I think doing things under pressure is something that everybody needs to do, and I think it will help them figure out who they are, and you know, if they have what it takes to do what they want to do. And I'm not just talking about fighting. I'm talking about anything. You know, at whatever level you're doing it. That's how you keep going up and up and up. And now I rather take a fight on a week's notice. I honestly do, because like I was saying, I'm always training, and but you know, when you don't have a fight coming up, then you're just training just to stay, like I was saying, at a certain level. But that's enough. With that mixed with experience that you have and how to control your you know, like your emotions and fear and things like that, how to control the tempo, that's enough for you to do well in a fight. So you know, when I was just going back to PK Saenchai for the first time, when actually I went there for the first time, I was looking for the fight, and and I had some issues over there, and they weren't able to find me a fight. And then Saenchai finally came into the gym, and you know, when he comes around, he trains with all of us, and we mess around and joke around and stuff like that. And he was asking me, when am I fighting? So I tell him, I have no idea, man. I've been trying to get a fight for a while, but they're not able to get me a fight. So he goes, okay, give me 1 second. So he goes and talks to the boss, and he says, okay, there's a fight on Tuesday night show, on a Lumpini show, which is the big night. It's on Tuesdays and Fridays. He's like, do you want to fight then? And this was on like a Thursday or Friday. We were discussing this, and I was like, yeah, I'll take that fight. And the reason why I was so excited is because I was still training and I felt good, and I was ready to fight. I knew I was going to be in shape, and that fight came by, and I felt in great shape doing that. So you know, you have to take those challenges in order to find out who you really are.
There's a lot you learn, isn't there, about yourself from fighting? You know, it's that pressure that you're talking about. I don't think that exists to the same level, unless there's that kind of physical risk that there is with like fighting, especially a full contact art like Muay Thai. You really do get to learn about yourself, and those kind of deadlines that kind of what I like about that. And I think it would probably resonate a bit with you as well from what you've said earlier. Those deadlines force you to be efficient, don't they, with what you're doing? It's kind of like, we've got no time for anything that's surplus here. We just need to do what we need to do to get ready for this. And it strips everything down to that. And that gives you kind of that model to go forwards as well, doesn't it? It's like, well, I know now in my next fight, these are the points I need to hit, and not everything else the 400 kicks or whatever's
Yeah,
being chucked
exactly.
at you.
Right. Right.
If you, I'm talking about like 400 kicks, if you could go back in time and sort of change your approach to fighting earlier on, what would you do? What would your advice kind of be?
I don't think I would do anything to change. I think everything that I did was necessary to put me in the position that I am today, including those 400 kicks that my coaches would make us do, and all those hard training sessions. You know, doing like countless rounds and things like that. So I think that's what helped shape me mentally. Even though, you know, when you think about it, I'm already that person because I'm able to go through that type of training regimen. So I'm already strong at that age. So there's nothing I would want to change at that time.
Right. And would there be, finally, a piece of advice that you'd give to someone that wants to be the best they can be? What would you say to them?
Well, it's just like I was saying before, it's just doing the day-to-day things that will progress your technical level. You know, like I was saying, in anything that you do, you have to keep working on that on a daily basis. Like I was saying with the graphic design, I love graphic design. I love art. I love painting, but I'm not in love with it. You know, I'm not passionate about it. So I don't practice it on a daily basis. With Muay Thai, I need to be doing that on a daily basis. Of course, you need to take rest days. That's part of training, I think. And that's it. I think that's the most important thing. Just worry about today, worry about tomorrow. All the other things, titles and awards and things like that, whatever in whatever field you're doing, that's all going to come once you establish a name for yourself.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you for taking the time to have a chat with me here on this podcast, and
So
all the best with everything you're going to do in the future, Ognjen.
yeah, thank you so much.
You can find out more about Ognjen's latest fighting exploits through his website, topicfight.com, and at topicfight on Instagram and Facebook. And go to topiccreative.com for his graphic design work. There are links to all of these with this episode. And if you found this valuable, please like, subscribe, and share with someone else it could help too. And I'll catch you next time.